Hello YouTube, this is Carrie, and tonight I have a story to share about my experience of trying to vote in yesterday's Ohio primary election. Some interesting things happened. So, for the backstory on this, I have had a hell of a time getting my voting information updated to match my new name and my new address. Basically, I did not know that I had to go into the actual election board and update it. Because before this, I had never had any problems with it. Whenever I went into the BMV, they would always ask me, do you want to register to vote? Do you want to update your voter information? And I would say yes, and it would be done. And that was it. And 2 years ago, I said, okay, well, I can do that. And the voter registration will update as soon as I do my vehicle registration. And then I got a rather nasty surprise when I went to vote a few months later, and my name did not exist in the system there. This year, yet again, I was in the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and I said, all right, so last year I told them to please update my voter information and it didn't happen. So can you guys please make sure that I get my voter information updated? And I assumed that they did. And imagine my surprise when once again I went to go to vote and my name wasn't in there, so I just gave up and didn't vote at all last fall. And finally, one of my friends who had gotten married said that in order to do a name change, you actually have to go into the voting office and you actually have to fill out a form. And so now I finally knew, but unfortunately, I never got around to it because I've been so busy with getting all of my other legal documents updated and getting preparation ready for SRS and my trip to Thailand and all this other stuff that I never got around to changing it. So yesterday was the Ohio primary, and I kind of had a decision to make. I was still registered under my old name, again, because I never got around to changing it. So basically, I had the option of yet again going in and casting a provisional ballot, or this was the reasoning in my head that I eventually thought of. Because I'm registered under my old name, unlike last time, this time I have my passport with me, which still has not been updated because I haven't sent in the forms yet. So, I wonder, if I go in with that ID, with my old name on it, can I maybe vote? So I decided to do something that I am never going to do again, never plan on doing again, never want to do again, but this election is very important to me. So I decided to swallow my pride and go into the voting election board dressed as a guy so that I could vote under my old name, which was in the books, instead of being forced to cast a provisional ballot under my new name like I was back in 2014. Oh boy. So, I actually basically did all the steps that a transgender guy has to go through in order to, and this is the first time that I've ever dressed as a guy in public since going full-time back in March of 2014. So, I was not looking forward to it, and I was just, anxiety was running nuts. I was scared to death that I was going to run into somebody that I knew because I'm actually stealth here, so if I ran into somebody that I knew at work, I was in serious trouble, but again, I was willing to risk it to caucus because this election is pretty damn important to me. So in any case, yeah, I put on my Beatles Rubber Soul t-shirt, which you might remember that I wore in my very first YouTube video, the one that I took pre-hormones, and I actually had to bind my chest, and I actually deliberately spoke in a lower voice. I tied my hair back into a ponytail so that, and tucked my hair back so that only my face would be visible and that the long hair would be as hidden as possible. And then, I actually, when I went in there, tried to speak in my low voice. So this was actually me trying to pass as my old self so that I could vote. And I was fully expecting, them to, assume that I was a guy because, I still have the fundamental male bone structure, and especially with the voice. Basically, I used my old voice, which sounds like this. Yes, I actually can do it. It doesn't sound very good, but I do it anyway. So I actually went in and I spoke like that. And so I came in. It took me like 2 minutes to get out of the car because I was looking left and right and making sure that absolutely nobody was watching because, again, there were high stakes here. And so I went in and there was a gentleman who looked at me and he was like, okay, what's the name? Charles. And we had an issue. Basically, my passport, unfortunately, after all of that hassle, was not enough. I had to have something with both my name and my current address on it. And obviously I did not have anything because my name's changed on everything except my passport pretty much. So, I had to explain to him that I had my name changed, and this is where it gets interesting. Somebody asked me, so did you change your name because of marriage? And so that should give you pretty much an indication of how well I passed as male. Not at all. You know, they were still expecting that I changed from a maiden name to a husband's name, even though I was trying to present as a guy, and I was even speaking in my old voice, for God's sake, which made me hate myself. And the entire time I was doing this, the entire room was staring at me. And because they thought this whole thing was hilarious. And the room, because it's a voting room where you're not supposed to talk about stuff, it was dead quiet. Everybody in the room could hear every single word that I was saying, and everyone was staring at me. And I just had the biggest, panic freak out attack, and I wanted to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. So finally I said, I'll go back and get my legal documents. I'll be back. And so, thank God that didn't last very long. That is definitely the last time I'm ever going to try to present as male in public. But when I finally showed up wearing the exact same hoodie except I did change from my baggy shorts, which are the last piece of male shorts that I own, into my normal pair of jeans. As soon as I walked in the door, the guy was like, "She's back." So, yeah, that was a pretty lousy attempt at passing. And it's actually kind of the point of the video is, I think that there's kind of a misunderstanding about trans women that, somehow people think that we are men dressing as women, where really, as that demonstrated, this is not the case. After a certain point on hormones, after a certain point where you are living as your post-transition self and is accepted as that self by everyone and socially interacting with the world as that person with everyone. And especially in terms of your speaking, mannerisms, and voice, I feel like whenever I try to use my lower voice, which is hard, by the way, because I'm so not used to it now. I have not spoken in that voice in 2 years. To me, I still sound like an extremely gay, feminine guy, and oh my God. So, my best efforts to pass as male failed. Completely miserably. People still were gendering me female, still assumed that my name change was because I got married and, had lost my maiden name. And thank God when I finally, thank God the anxiety was gone when I showed back up as my actual self, and that whole debacle ended. And by the way, the people at the precincts did finally help me change my name on my voting records, so yay. But again, it's I cannot pass as male anymore. Even with my best efforts in terms of clothing, binding my chest, speaking in a low voice, trying to tie my hair back so that it was out of the way and in an androgynous style, still could not pass as male. People were still reading me as female. People stared at me, maybe because they couldn't tell which gender that I was, but eventually they still settled on female. So, again, I do feel like there is a misconception that trans women can just go back to being male at any time, where no, like, for me to pass as male, again, I would have to do what any pre-transition trans guy has to do, and still cannot really pass at first. So I have to admit, it is kind of liberating. And, you know, my friend Zoe, I was talking to her about that afterwards, and, you know, she kind of said, well, you're all woman now. So, and, you know, I've known this for a while. Like, I think you might have noticed that most of my videos where I was doubting my passability and really hating on myself were from last summer. This is because of another event that happened back in September. Basically, I went to visit my dad where he lives, which happens to be at a nudist camp. Lovely. The trans woman's worst nightmare. And, I mean, I've been going there since I was 7 years old. So everyone there knows me, and, you know, wasn't just going to respect my own modesty for the sake of, like, I was there to play volleyball. I mean, if I'm going to go visit Dad, I am going to enjoy myself while I'm there. So I was not looking forward to how people were going to react, but I sucked it up and did it. And this is the funny part. I met someone named Barb who I had never seen before. And, you know, I was expecting, there were a lot of people there that I'd never seen before because it was Super Bowl weekend, which is an annual event where like these thousands of people all come together to play volleyball for 3 days. And so there were so many people that I'd never met before. The thing that I was most afraid of, and I was still self-conscious about this at the time, was that they were not going to be able to tell that I was presenting as female. That they were just going to call me he, they were going to assume that nothing was different about me just because I still had my downstairs anatomy. I was completely wrong about that. Everyone immediately started gendering me female. I never heard he once all weekend, which is shocking because, you know, I think I brought this study up before. It's called a gender, some long sciencey word approach, which talks about how when a body has like every feminine feature possible and yet has a penis, that body is gendered male half the time, and people tend to be uncertain about which sex that is, where I was shocked. Everyone gendered me female. Everyone immediately noticed. And this is the funny part. Barb, who is someone I met who had never met me before, did not even know that I was trans. I mean, this is seriously how ignorant some people are to what a trans body looks like and what a trans body is. She thought that I was a cisgender girl who was born with a birth defect. Which is funny, that's basically what trans women are. We are just women who happen to have been born with the genital anatomy of the opposite sex. And because doctors don't assign sex based on one's internal sense of gender identity because it's unmeasurable, they take one look at your genitals and say, boy, girl, done. So even if someone was a cisgender girl but happens to have been born with a penis, people would assume that she was a guy. And because so much of gender in childhood is just based on presentation, clothing, hair, you can seriously interchange the sexes with pretty much no effort whatsoever up until puberty, because their bodies are more or less interchangeable. The only difference is their genitals and then a bunch of external markers of gender that are thrown onto them by society. So I thought that was completely hilarious that Barb seriously thought that I was a cisgender girl with a penis. And there seriously are, like, it didn't even occur to me until then just how far outside, like, as a trans person, I could identify a transgender body immediately just by looking at it. Where other people can see even the most male-identifying feature of a body and still not know that it's because the person is trans, because they don't even know that so much of gender in the first place is about external presentation, and really it's about, secondary sexual characteristics are all about hormones. They have nothing to do with what your chromosomes are. They have nothing to do with whether you have testes or ovaries. They are completely just based on hormones. Somebody who is completely biologically male could take testosterone blockers and estrogen at puberty, and nobody would ever be able to tell the difference between him and a cisgender girl, because he would have, his voice would never change, his face would never develop masculine features, his bone structure would never masculinize, all of that stuff. Other people do not know that, which I was not aware of until that point, which now I am definitely aware of. I mean, that was like the most affirming thing, is that I passed even when I had my genitals visible. Like, how can I possibly think that people are seeing me as a guy when the most distinguishing masculine feature didn't even get me read as a guy? And I was wearing no makeup whatsoever. I had my hair tied back all weekend. I was making no deliberate effort to present as female whatsoever. And people still were able to tell that they should call me she. And they didn't even ask me or ask Dad. They just knew. And yet again, now this incident with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles has confirmed that even when I'm trying to present as male, I can't. And it's because I have a female body. Completely. And, it's not even just I am presenting as female. I am female. And so I thought that was pretty funny, and, kind of an illustration again of how I was way too hard on myself last summer. It was just because I let my mind run away with me. And hypothetically, after SRS, I really don't think that there's going to be anybody that's going to be able to, I really don't think that I ever have to tell anyone unless I want to. Because, again, I couldn't even pass as a guy when I was using my, quote, male voice. Apparently my appearance is feminine enough that even if I'm using a voice that sounds male, I'm still read as a girl. Again, so I just thought that was funny. I wanted to share that story and just, kind of illustrate that there's way more to gender than just what society tells you, and, even how you dress and about all that stuff. And for trans people, after long enough on hormones, you really do have exactly the body of, there's enough feminine features in my body. Like, at this point on hormones, I have skin texture that is more or less identical to a cis woman. I have boobs, obviously. And I have a more feminine butt. And my, even though I do still have a more guyish bone structure in my face and my shoulders, the musculature and the skin and the fat structure has all changed so that it is, by default, female on a fundamental level. So again, whatever. I don't know where I was going with that, but I just wanted to share that story. Also, I do apologize for not having made a video for so long. I have been really, really super busy with both preparation for sex reassignment surgery, because I have to update all of my legal documents. I have to get a visa. I have to get my passport fixed. I have to get approved for family medical leave. I have to... all this crap. It's a pain in the butt, but it's going to be worth it. And also, I've been working on a side project. Basically, I think I mentioned this before, that I always wanted to do a YouTube channel on animation. I am actually starting it. Last winter, I did an actual review of every single anime show that came out, and now I'm condensing that into a top 7 worst and a top 10 best list. As of this recording, I have it about 80% edited. It's going to be going up within the next week, and I'm definitely going to share that here. In any case, it's just a dumb little anecdote. I thought that was funny, that I could not pass as male even if I tried. So, hooray, I'm all woman now, apparently. Anyway, bye. Thanks for watching, everyone.